Bonsoir, merci d'être venu en nombre ce soir. Nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir Josep Ricart cofondateur et associé de HARQUITECTES. Désolé pour la présentation, c'est bon, merci, j'ai la caution. Invité par l'option inventée dans l'existant, dans le cadre de l'exposition Territoires en transition, une exposition nationale sur la sobriété foncière, commanditée par le ministère de la transition écologique et de la cohésion des territoires. Merci. Je remercie le service de la communication aussi de l'école d'architecture et l'ARDEPA qui ont œuvré et participé à rendre possible cette conférence. Merci aussi pour les traducteurs qui vont pouvoir nous aider tout à l'heure pour l'espagnol. Et je passe la parole à Lucille qui a quelques annonces à faire.
Le micro marche. Bonsoir à tous et à toutes. Juste un petit mot au nom de l'ARDEPA, donc Lucille Vinchon, directrice de l'ARDEPA. On est ravis d'avoir été associés par l'intermédiaire de Jean-Michel Fratquin et Sébastien Magré à cette conférence de HARQUITECTES, qu'on remercie aussi d'avoir fait le déplacement. Ça nous intéressait de prendre part à cet événement dans le cadre des voyages de l'ARDEPA. Donc très rapidement, on travaille actuellement sur un voyage en Espagne, plus particulièrement à Majorque, pour aller visiter entre autres des opérations de H, Aulets, Péristoral et voilà, d'autres agences locales autour de l'usage des ressources présentes sur l'île à Majorque pour la réalisation entre autres de logements sociaux. C'est dans ce cadre-là qu'on avait à cœur de s'investir dans l'organisation de cet événement. Si vous avez des questions autour du voyage, n'hésitez pas à venir nous voir à la fin de la conférence. Je te repasse la parole.
Merci. Le studio d'architecture HARQUITECTES a été fondé en 2000 par David Lorente, Josep Ricart, Xavier Ros et Roger Tudó, qui sont également enseignants dans différentes écoles d'architecture européennes, mais aussi enseignants aux États-Unis, au Chili. La Catalogne est le lieu d'expression privilégié de leur œuvre, ce qui les fait se confronter à des situations très diverses. La montagne et la pente, la mer, l'horizontalité, les grandes villes, la ruralité, les friches domestiques ou industrielles, la périphérie, les franges, la déprise foncière et le paysage avec comme matrice commune la lumière de la Méditerranée. Les matériaux qu'ils choisissent de mettre en œuvre sont simples, rustiques, bruts, issus du contexte appréhendé comme carrière. Ces matériaux sont souvent réagencés, réinterprétés, et leur mise en œuvre exprime clairement ce qu'ils sont. Ils portent en eux la trace et la mémoire de leur fabrication, des gestes et des mains qui les ont façonnés. Ils racontent l'histoire d'un savoir-faire qui s'exprime dans la matière, par sa mise en œuvre et tout au long de son élaboration en édifice. Leur premier projet concerne essentiellement l'échelle domestique de la maison, de la transformation d'existants. HARQUITECTES revendique l'acte de construire comme essentiel à leur travail, réalisé avec pragmatisme, sans idéologie et sans théorie, un apprentissage par l'expérience. Alors comment une œuvre, intimement rattachée à une région et même à une périphérie, qui fait en même temps l'objet de publications internationales, qui est citée dans toutes les écoles d'architecture, arrive à susciter un tel intérêt autour de sa production. Si l'inscription locale fascine et ramène à l'idée de régionalisme, il apparaît que l'architecture de HARQUITECTES s'appuie sur des concepts réflexifs dans l'expérience du faire et de la construction, qu'elle dépasse les frontières et pose les conditions de l'élaboration d'un axe théorico-pragmatique qui interroge et façonne un espace problématique contemporain. Pour tenter de mieux approcher et comprendre cette démarche et ses œuvres, je laisse maintenant la parole à Josep.
Good night. Thank you very much for the invitation. I will do the presentation in English. My English is not amazing, so don't worry too much if you don't understand my words. I hope that with the 150 images you have here, it will be enough to have some fun or at least to have interest for my presentation. Thank you for the invitation. It's quite impressive to be here. This building for us is something. It's part of our previous experience, and yeah, it's really nice to be here tonight. We are basically in an incredible ecological crisis. But, and our projects in general, it's been seen as something, as an example in terms of sustainability and so on. But I'm not here to talk about sustainable strategies or, yeah, ecological strategies. I'm basically to explain what all architects we finally do, which is to project experiences. But in our case, we try, or we believe that by using ecological strategies, the experience could be more intense, even sometimes more extraordinary. And then also the buildings can be sustainable. It's 25 years, oh, let's see. Something happened. Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay, it's okay. Yeah, it's 25 years since we began the office, but we've never been an office with a previous theory. We've never got theories to be demonstrated through our projects. It's basically the opposite. It's after doing all these years doing projects, all these years having experience in our buildings, in places like this, that after this experience, after these projects, thanks to invitations like that, that we have begun to produce some, to conceptualize, to deduce concepts that leads and gives a frame to our decisions. And it's by visiting places, it's by reviewing our own projects, by doing a continuous review of our buildings, that now that we are getting older, we are more able to explain, or at least to present basic concepts, basic strategies that more or less lead our process at the office. But during this, it's not the 25 years which is interesting, in my opinion. It's more from the point of the 2008 financial crisis in Europe that I think that the office began to produce something more interesting stuff, and also to begin this conceptual evolution that a little bit can be expressed as the difference between this picture and this picture. Oh, sorry. You have to tell me. I can see here. I'm sorry. What's going on? I don't know what happened. Let's see. No. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. You haven't? Did you saw that? Okay, this was about the experience. Okay. Yeah, what I think is the interesting evolution of the office can be expressed through these two images. It's 15 years time between the two images, the same house. And it's an evolution that also can be expressed in the difference between this kind of very dogmatic, very strategic drawings, diagrams that express clear, sustainable strategies about ecological footprint and so on, but that has evolved into that kind of drawings that try to express more the thermodynamical experience. During these 15, 18 years, what has happened is while we were doing that kind of very tough, very pragmatic, very dogmatic projects based on sustainability, where sustainability was the challenge of the office, was the final objective of everything that we did, doing projects absolutely in zero energy, passive behavior, being very serious in all that kind of stuff. But we have discovered that at the end, what happened, the final experience could be really intense, could be really fantastic, even extraordinary. So it was thanks to that kind of first approach, based in very ecological concern, that we have discovered that what is really interesting is to project the experience. So that's in general the general big concept of the evolution of the office. Go from sustainability to the experience, going from dogmatic strategies to project the human being experience into the architectonical space. And I think that this is interesting to talk about beautiful, to talk about extraordinary, to talk about experience, because in this ecological crisis where we are living, we have to be conscious that we are losing the narrative. We are talking all the time about catastrophes, and we need to recover the narrative about the ecological crisis in order to present to society a hope that a better living is possible, thanks to sustainability, not the opposite. I mean, we have a real problem in terms of narrative in front of what's happening out there. And I think that that's what I find that it's interesting to talk about something that is not about just the catastrophic aspects of the ecological crisis. But if we want to present that idea that a better life is possible, we also have to assume that to live better, we have to live completely different. The way we are living today is impossible to achieve a better world and, of course, a better and extraordinary life. So the title of the lecture is Radical Kindness, but it's more about radical than about kindness, okay? We really believe that to convince people, that to convince clients, that to get certain commissions and to achieve certain levels of sustainability or this better experience, we have to be radical in a lot of aspects. We have to do a radical review of a lot of things. First of all, we have to review conventions. We have to review the social conventions about how we live, how we have to live, how we have to use buildings. We have to review spatial geometry, the geometry of the space. We really believe that the geometry of the space is more about vertical, is more about gravity, is more about convection of the air, is more about stratification of the temperature than the horizontal, traditional human scale geometry. We have to review typologies. We have to review typologies based on special spaces defined by attributes and not by functions. We have, of course, to review technology and be over the traditional conventions about how things has to be built. And, of course, that we have to review the idea and the concept of comfort. I mean, a comfort more based in the natural behavior of the building than in the standards and the conventional ideas of comfort. We have to review also what it means to be architect in society. I mean, we have to recover for our profession the responsibility over comfort design. It's something that we have lost in front of the engineers, we have lost in front of other professions, and it's something that we can recover. And in fact, we as architects, we are reviewing all the time how we do things, how we do stuff, how we project. Every project at the office is continuously in a continuous revision. Even when the building is over, is finished, we are reviewing everything, every time, really insistently, what we have done, what happened, how it's going, what's the experience. One of the concepts or one of the ideas, strategies, approach that is important at the office is the relation with time. To introduce time in the architectonical project is a traditional concept, is a beautiful sentence. It's very common to listen to the idea that time in the project. In our case, it's very, very simple approaches to time, but it has 4 or 5 different vectors. The first is the traditional idea of time in the project, which is to work with heritage, to work with the pre-existence. In that vector, our position, our approach to time in front of to work with heritage is very objective. our projects in front of the pre-existence are always asking to the pre-existence matter if it's still able to perform in the new building, if it's still able to perform as a structural elements, if it's still able to perform as a geometrical space, as a matter that can help in the comfort of the space, far before than to ask the heritage if in terms of culture we have to be, it has to be synchronized or it has to be respected. So it's not a compositional approach, it's not a cultural approach, it's always a metabolic and a performance approach. To introduce and to work with time in the projects, in our case, means also to show the process of construction in the projects. I mean, by show something that is designed to be hidden behind a plaster, behind a coating system, a cladding system, by showing the process, by unhiding that kind of construction process, you're also introducing the idea of time, the history of construction into the experience. Also to show the products, because the products of construction has a time that began before of the construction process itself. In fact, most of the products that we use in our buildings, its history begins a time before even we began to project the building. Or to show the matter. To show the matter, link our experience with a geological time. So these are strategies that we use, concepts that we approach in order to introduce time in our projects. But the title of the this transhistorical concept is not our concept. It's a concept developed by this critic, Andrea Rubi, that by observing our buildings, coming to this idea that was quite interesting to us, the idea that in our buildings, maybe because the structures in our buildings assumes a lot of attributes, assumes a lot of the conditions of the experience, these structures links the building with a large time before the project and a large time in the future. So in his observation was this idea that the structure gets a level of autonomy that then what it looks that the architect has done is just merely a basic occupation of the space. So that we design structures that look like if were already there. Our newest structures look, in Andreas Rubi's opinion, as a pre-existing construction where we just basically colonize, we basically put some stuff inside. And I quite agree. I like very much this idea that the structure as something that try to be more permanent, lasting in time than just the circumstantial, the provisionary of the occupation of the space. Time is a continuous event. I mean, it's something, there's an idea that quite obsesses me, the idea that the absolutely new doesn't exist. The absolutely new, it's not possible. I mean, we are just part of a process and we have to assume that we are just transforming matter for a lapse of time. But by assuming this, maybe it's possible to produce a more lasting structures, a more lasting buildings, able to assume the change of society, able to live for longer time, and then become ecologically interesting because this structure is able to adapt to how society change. And to do some examples of that transhistorical concept, I want to show you some projects. This is and I think this building for us in our history as office is important, and it's important to explain that building in that building because this building was done like 3 years before we did this competition. And we were really impressed and we were really conscious about the politics and the ideological level of this building. So it was part of our research when we did this competition. Of course, it's not the same, but well, for me, it's really nice to explain this project in this building tonight. I mean, this is a research center close to Barcelona for a university, and it's a research center for environmental research. So it was really important to develop a building really, really radical in terms of sustainable strategies and so on. And we won the competitions by presenting that kind of very clear, simple strategy. It's not a building with a greenhouse on the top, that it was part of the commission, it was part of the competition conditions. It's a building into a greenhouse, which is a little bit different. And we thought in the competition, and is how we won the competition, that just because of the behavior of the greenhouse in the Mediterranean conditions and so on, it was as simple as imagine the greenhouse as a closed envelope during winter time, getting sun gains in the greenhouse effect and so on, and becoming a shade system in the summertime with a lot of ventilation in order to achieve comfort in the summertime. Quite simple, very potent and so on. And we developed the project by this idea with this greenhouse system, able to be completely open in summer, able to close in winter, with this double approach, dividing the permanent from the available and reversible parts of the building, the structure as something that has to last forever, and the cladding system, the facade system, as something provisionary, something that can be changed in the future and so on. But what happens when we develop the project and we began to do some simulation, this is the courtyard that is for vertical ventilation and so on. It's quite obvious in terms of climate performance. But we discovered that with the greenhouse effect and with the ventilation and with the shading effect, it was not enough in summer. I suppose it's the opposite in this building in winter. But in Barcelona, in summer, the open greenhouse in summer was not enough to achieve a level of comfort, at least in the in-between spaces. Okay? The general strategy was to have in the intermediate spaces passive comfort and just into the closed spaces a little bit more active systems. But it was not enough. The comfort was only possible when we introduced in the simulations the weight, the heavy of the structure. When we introduced the inertia, the physical performance of the heavy of the structure into the system, into the simulation, then the summer comfort was possible, okay? Because the inertia, the mass of the structure works as a sponge. It works like a storage of energy. So during the day, this heavy, this weight, stores the excess of heat, and during the night, thanks to the natural ventilation, the excess of heat dissipates. Okay, so just when the structure come into the simulation, the comfort was possible. And from this step, we decided to begin to make more clear this idea that there's something that is permanent, which is the structure, and there's something that is reversible, which is the provisional divisions, the facade, and not only that the structure is not only a support performance part of the building, is not only a tool that helps to balance the temperatures during the day and during the seasons, it could be something else. It's the real heritage of the building, it's the real state of the building. So we began to introduce all the attributes possible in the structure. So it's about the structure, it's about the support, it's about the temperature, but it's also about the ventilation, it's also about the active systems. We placed the heating system and the freshening systems into the same slabs. We place everything, even acoustic conditions, by framing the structure in a sinuous silhouette in order to help to the acoustics. So this was the first building where we began into this idea that the structure is the part of the building that we are interested to give most of the attributes of the experience. This is something that we feel that make the experience stronger and more clear, because it's in the most permanent part of the building. The rest is a pure occupation. It's just a colonization that will change with time. It's a completely different example, but for me, is a little bit the same. This is a small house in Barcelona where the structure is, again, everything. The structure, it makes that sense that was there before we began our project. Okay, this is a attached house in the center of Barcelona with a very simple strategy based on section. The section divides privacy, the daily activities in the ground floor, kids in the first floor, parents in the second floor. It's an easy section with open space, just no divisions. But in this case, the structure is the one that, I don't know the name in French or in English, is matizar. It's a filter, okay? The structure works as a filter that is transforming the experience from the most public part, which is the street, to the most indoor and most private and most specific part, which is the garden. So in this case, our intention to give attributes to the structure was, of course, because of the heavy, because of the thermodynamics and so on, but was also about geometry and how to give a very specific experience based on the geometry of the structure. But in this case, everything is a structure. Also the windows are the structure. So the whole, the distance between the columns, between the pillars, is right on the windows of the house. So everything is based on the structure. All the attributes of the experience are the structure. The rest is just an occupation because of the furniture that has done by the owners and nothing else. Okay, so in the beautiful of this house is that one day it was a neighbor just crossing in front of the door. The door was open. Okay, the lady owner was there, and the guy have a sight into the house, and he asked to come inside. Okay. And the beautiful was that this guy asked to the owner, what was here before? So the structure is new, but the sensation of this guy was that maybe it was a former industry, maybe a workshop, maybe whatever, it doesn't mind. But the owner was not very happy with this question. But for me, it was fantastic because it was this idea that the structure is new, but link the experience with something previous, so maybe it's linking also to the future. And I think that this is a guarantee of lasting, is a guarantee that this building will be able to be transformed, will be able to assume different programs, will be able to assume different uses. And for me, this is my interpretation of this transhistorical concept that was developed by Andreas. This is a showroom that we've just finished. It's an event showroom place for small events. And is also highly defined by the structure, okay? But in this case, not only because of the geometry, in fact, it's an attached house. You just can't do a section like that. But we have developed this geometry with the structure in order to produce a bigger space as the combination of these two chapel sections side by side of the garden, okay? It's geometry, it's a structure, it's okay, but in this case, what is specific of this project was that the partition walls, okay, the walls that divides the plot from the neighbors, were very, very weak. It was built with rammed earth, okay? It was built with pure earth. It was very weak walls in very bad conditions. So we decided that the way to reinforce the structure was by projecting concrete, okay? Was by just projecting concrete. And this construction process began to be interesting as part of this experience, okay? Because produce a very specific texture, produce a very specific color of the material, it produced a very specific process. So we decided that not only the partition walls, that all the structure of the house, it's going to be the same technique, okay? It's not, so the structure is not just geometry, it's not just inertia and comfort tool, is also part of the experience in terms of color, in terms of texture, in terms of again, to show the constructive process. The rest, again, is just a pure and very basic colonization with furnitures and some lights. Yeah. So again, to be radical, I don't know if we are kind, but we try to be radical at every step of the process, in every new commission and so on. The very beginning of the office, we are we used to be a small office. Now we are a small office in Barcelona. But our first 10, 15 years, we basically did houses, private homes, but we approached that very simple program, always reviewing and trying to go deep in the concept of shelter. What means to live, what means to be sheltered, what means to be living in a house. But now, during the last 10 years, more or less, we've been lucky, and we've won some, maybe a lot of competitions for public buildings, for public facilities. And we have tried to do the same with the public buildings, to review what's the deep meaning of a public facility. We have done this very orientated by Louis Kahn approach to the idea of institution. The institution as the result of a social agreement. The institution sounds very serious, okay? But when you read Louis Kahn, it sounds a little bit more kind, a little bit more interesting, okay? But we like this paradox between such a strong word as institution and this point of view of Louis Kahn as something where the agreement happened, the social ritual happened, take place, and this is how we have to design and to review that idea of institution. It's not what is happening in general. What is happening in general is the institutions, the public facilities, has become just a pure representative facade of the power of the institution. Is a system of control, okay? Is a facade that just support a pragmatic basic program. It happens here, it happens in Spain, it happens everywhere. But I think that we have the chance to review that in an ontological way, to review the concept of institution itself, to find out what's the primordial, what's the essential space on that kind of institutions where the gathering happens, where the social ritual happens. And this obsession to review that essential space, to find out what's the specificity of this institution, the specificity of the social context, to develop a special space where the gathering happen, that we have been developing during these last 10 years through these different equipments and facilities that we have been lucky to win in competitions. This is a beautiful example of that. It's an institution we finished last year. This is a mental health institution. This is a foundation for people from kids to adults that has different mental disease, from brain paralysis to autism. Okay, it's an amazing institution that works with that kind of people, with care, but also with workshops to learn to have a job and so on. They are called Prodis Institution, and we won the competition to develop this project. And they got this former factory. It used to be a textile industry in Terrassa, close to Barcelona. Okay, and in this case, this is the original image of the factory. In this case, that essential space, that primordial space where important things happen, where the social happens, it's not a specific inside the space. It was the idea to enlarge, to introduce the public space that surrounds the building, so the streets, into the building itself. So we have developed a real street. We have divided the building. We have introduced real public space into the private property. Okay, not only for comfort and thermodynamical reasons like the scheme, but also because to produce this space for gathering, this space for where people come together, where people arrive, where the unexpected happen. I think that being in this building with this ramp, with all what happens here, I think it's easy to understand our strategies, at least in this kind of ideas, okay? But it's a complex program, so it's not only about this intermediate street space, it's also another interesting thing, which is that in that kind of industrial spaces, beautiful, huge, large, with beautiful natural light, but the real challenge is not about how to introduce comfort strategies, because by introducing more insulation, making new windows, you can achieve a better comfort in that kind of industrial buildings and larger spaces and diaphanous and continuous spaces. The real challenge in that kind of spaces is how you introduce hierarchy, how you introduce order, how you organize activities in a complex program into a building which the better attributes of the building are based in this non-hierarchy space, huge, continuous, diaphanous spaces. In this case, the way to introduce order was by using natural light to organize the space. So we did that kind of inside courtyards just with pure natural light that makes order and that divides the space just with natural light, because the columns, the timber columns doesn't close the space. It's just like a filter from one space to the other. Okay, this is a, well, I think it's a building that it's really open. As it's a real street, I mean, it's able to be visited. So, I mean, I invite you to, if you never come to Barcelona, this is not far away. So, I mean, it's a beautiful place to go. And it's true that, and the beauty of this building, and I'm trying to be really true, is with people. It's amazing. It's amazing. Nothing is more sad than to see that kind of programs in just a conventional building. And nothing is more beautiful than to see these people performing in that kind of building based on pure natural light organization. In fact, there's an interesting, amazing data. The autism guys, the autism users of the building, during the year that they have been using the building, the crisis of the autism guys has decreased 60%. 60% less crisis since they are using this building. So the combination, the engagement of people, and so it's our success, because we are looking for that. What is this primordial space where the relation between society and institution become stronger? This is another, well, it's an institution of work. This is an office headquarters. This is a headquarters for a company. And our research, again, is to see how to review a different kind of institution. In that kind, an institution for work as group, for work in an office, for work in groups into a former space that was diaphanous, continuous, to work in a dividing programs and people and so on, without losing the attributes of the space, of the natural light, of the height of the space. And it was in this case by proposing a new way of working as a group, which is an horizontal, to work in a circle. In Catalonia, we have this traditional dance. The project is not based on that, but we have this traditional dance called La Sardana. We dance sardanas just in a circle. So, and I think it's a beautiful way. It's not a beautiful dancing, but it's a beautiful position in a group of people working together, but in an horizontal relation. So we developed this system of clusters into the industrial space, where people work around something that it's for leisure. This building has 70% of the surface of the building is not for working, but they work fantastically, and they work a lot, and they are happy, and they, well, I think so. Well, to work in a pharma company means to be happy for sure. The salaries are fantastic and so on. So, Okay, and everything works in the same way, even the central courtyard that works as a real cluster, and all the circulation of the building is based on this central circle. Okay, so everything is a group of circles. So I don't want to look obsessed, but we are. Okay. We are, I mean, it's the problem to be four partners, okay? That the one that scares you more is not your client, is not the public administration, is your partner. That when you arrive at the office, they look at you. We agree on that. We agree on that strategy. So let's go forward for that, okay? Let's go strong. Let's go tough. Let's be really radical in what we have agreed at the office. And I think that this is good. And our agreements are based in a continuous conversation, in a continuous dialogue, in a continuous working at the office, talking, and in that idea of research, not in construction. We are old enough to have a lot of tools, to know a lot of techniques, but to research in what's the deep meaning of the stuff that we deal with, the architects, which is homes, which is shelters, which is institutions, public programs, and so on. And the idea of special spaces. It's again not from us. It's more about Jacques Zonderlat, who developed this idea of special spaces but not specialized spaces. No? That sentence that I've used a lot from Zonderlat, which is functionalism is against freedom of use. When something is so specialized, is highly specialized in one function, it's just is for one function. So freedom of use is not possible. This is something that it's quite for the people from the 90s, like I am, that we were taught at the school in that rationalism concepts. Functionalism and freedom of use should be compatible. But Zonderlat is very clear in that sense that is the opposite. And also the less with the idea of percept, but well, it's not, I mean, what I want to talk is about what means for us a special space. And it will look a little bit snob, like we want to be extravagant, we want to be just radical in geometry, but it's not like that. When we arrive to that kind of radical section, extreme, even strange or weird section with such a vertical dimension, it's not just to be different, it's not just to be special. That kind of a special is always about the experience. And our experience is that vertical space is more well related with nature. Okay? I mean, we've been during the 20th century into the idea of the human scale, into that idea of the horizontal because of the view, because of the land, because of the horizon. But in fact, behind this idea of the horizontal, a century where the idea of that the energy was infinite, during the 20th century, everybody has lived with the idea that energy was absolutely infinite. So the design, and the other day I was reading a text from Mies van der Rohe that was absolutely clear about the idea that we are designing something that is artificial. We are designing something that is on the other side of the glass. We are designing fissure bowls. In fact, we've been living in fissure bowls. And then, from that approach of that the energy is infinite, the horizontal is possible, because the deeper is the horizontal, you have the artificial light to solve the problem with the artificial. You have the HVA systems to solve the problem of the ventilation. You have a lot of tools. But if we want to really recover that sense of awareness, of relationship with nature, we really believe that the vertical is far more natural. Maybe it's not more human, but it's more natural than the horizontal. That's why we have arrived or conclude into that kind of radical vertical sections. Because rain is vertical, gravity is vertical, stratification of temperature, so energy is vertical, okay? Natural light is vertical. So in that idea to project the experience, not to project the building, but to project the conditions for the experience, the vertical for us means a lot of new natural attributes for the experience. To feel the air, to feel a natural temperature based on the inertia, a natural temperature based on the stratification, gravity, and everything. So this singular, maybe strange, maybe bizarre, but extraordinary space happened because it's very clear to us that vertical is more natural than horizontal. This is another example of the same. This is a house where the south side of the plot was with this terrible neighbor, so high that was impossible to get sun gains from the south, okay? Because Granollers is a small town close to Barcelona, very strange because the plots are not north-south direction, which is very the common in Catalonia. It is west orientation. So in this case, in the west, we have the worst natural light in Mediterranean because it's very hot. So it's the worst orientation, the west. I was amazed in Belgium, they always ask to have the sittings facing west because when they arrive home, they want to have some sun at the, okay. So, but in Barcelona, the west is forbidden, okay? And this avenue, noisy avenue, was west orientation. And in the south, the only way to get sun gains was forbidden because of the neighbor. So we come, because of these very objective conditions, we come in again into that very vertical space, which is the sitting of this house, okay? Which is quite extraordinary, but believe me that in both cases, well, in the previous house, this house won an award a couple of years ago. And the jury coming to the house to visit the house because it's one of the only awards in Spain that the jury visit the buildings, okay? So, and I remember to go to the house half an hour before the jury to see if all the furniture were all right, if everything was a little bit not much messy. And I found the user, the owner of the house, seated in the middle of this very vertical impluvium, sitting in the sofa with a dish of pasta, watching TV. With the skylight completely open, you felt the air crossing, and it was his happy space. So, I mean, it's not about the preconception about what should be a sitting room. It's about the fantastic experience that guy was having in this space. And this space is the same. It's the same situation. It's a different coach, but it's the same kind of guy eating pasta in front of the TV. So that's the only way to get sun gains from the south, okay? Having the same high than the neighbor. This is again another concept that is not from us, but we feel really comfortable with that idea of urban bedroom. It's developed by a friend of us from Madrid that has done, again, an article. Because, I mean, for us it's really important to explain our stuff, to have this kind of invitation or to write an article or to do a presentation. It's the moment that you review what you have done, what you review, what you have been experiencing or thinking on the projects, to translate the project process into some clear concepts, okay? In this case was for a publication, and these people from Madrid developed that idea of urban bedroom that is also interesting for us. And coming back to that concept that how bad the institution has been developed during the last century, that idea that not only institutions, also houses, single houses, are basically that idea of a representative facade that protect a pragmatic program. And not only that, something that is more weird and more suspicious and more, I think, more dangerous. The idea that the facade is the line that not only divides indoor from outdoor, divides privacy from public, divides property. It's an artificial line that we have assumed as a convention that everything changed. And this is quite a way of the real experience. The real experience doesn't begin when you cross the threshold, doesn't begin when you open the door. The real experience maybe begin in a square, maybe begin in the school where you work, maybe begin, I don't know where. So, I mean, the experience in architecture is not only into the house, into the public building, and we try to blur, we try to erase this clear division. So, from that idea comes, and it's part again of that primordial or essential space I was explaining before, the idea that maybe this space where gathering happens, where everybody comes together in disagreement about the idea of the institution, maybe it's just the enlargement to introduce the public space into the public building. And from here comes that idea of the urban bedroom. This is a competition we want. I always try to don't show pictures or drawings of non-built projects. I'm so proud always to explain that I always show buildings that have been already built, that are finished, that has been possible to be experienced, okay? But in this case, I will show you three projects that are on construction, okay? So we hope to have a good experience in a next future. This is a theater in Barcelona in Parallel Avenue. This is a Teatre Arnau. This is also a pre-existing building, but the protected, the heritage is just the theater. And we have done, the project is about the transformation of the theater to reform the theater, but also to build a cultural center that is closely related with the theater. It's in the cultural center where we have done this mirror geometry with the theater, okay, that works as the entrance, enlarging the public space and producing this very important space for the whole institution, which is this entrance. This is the MACBA Museum. It's the extension of the Richard Mayer Museum in the center of Barcelona, which is a little bit the same, but with a different archetype of public space. This is a porch, this is a gallery, this is a huge urban structure that works as a non-hierarchy entrance to the museum. And this is for a lot of reasons, also for a question of the image of the museum in front of the city, because what is supposed to be important in the basis of the competition, which is the exhibitions spaces, ask for a height of the building really that is a little bit too much for the neighborhood. So we decided to put this gallery in the middle of the exhibition part of the museum and the public space. So the gallery is half size of the museum, and it's not only a question of a skylight, it's a question of produce this kind of public space that is not only an entrance, is not only a gallery, is also the space where the unexpected of the museum happen. It's a completely public part of the building. There's no control to come into this gallery. Okay? The control is when you try to come into the exhibition part. And this is the third example in that sense of the urban bedroom. This is a competition that we won just 6 months ago for the National Catalan Art Museum. This is just close to the Mies van der Rohe pavilion. Okay, so that's the Mies pavilion. And the building is an existing exhibition hall that was built in the 29, the same year than the Mies pavilion. And it's a huge exhibition hall, okay, that was built in that moment. And the idea is to take the In the top of the hill is the present day's National Art Museum of Catalonia. So it's to make double surface of the museum in this former exhibition hall. Okay. In that case, what we've done is that large infinite open, again to erase, to blur the idea of door, the idea of just one entrance, and to produce a more generous relation with the public space. But when you come inside, it's again a public space. It's like instead of doing like the rest of the teams, which divides the exhibition hall with a large hall, a large lobby to have access to all the program, we prefer to do this street that surrounds all the exhibition hall as a street that goes adapting to the topography of the hill, with that kind of roof that is based on the, well, it's based in some skylights that is in the former building and so on. Well, it doesn't matter, but it's again this idea to enlarge, to introduce the public into the building. Well, this is quite obvious. This is a facility we did in Barcelona in Sants neighborhood, which is again to introduce the street into. Okay. Yeah, it's about vertical, but it's not just about vertical. And in that sense, well, we work in very, we work basically in dialogue with the people at the office, not only the partners, but we all the people working. We at the office, we have just a very large one table, and we are 20 people surrounding the table. And the partners, we don't have specific place. We don't have chair at the office, okay? We move around the table. Well, we have chairs, but we move from one chair to the other. Okay, so we are all the time talking, dialoguing, but the element that we share to discuss are in general very clear, tough schemes, black and white schemes, and that kind of simple, very easy drawings that try to demonstrate that the strategy. There's a sentence. I mean, there's a sentence from Sherlock Holmes that he said to Watson, something like, "When the logical is impossible, then the absurd doesn't matter how illogical looks, is the answer." Something like that, okay? When all the logical is not possible, then the rest doesn't matter how incredible is the conclusion. And for us, we are not, it's what I was when you have three partners looking at you that this is the good answer, you're not, you feel strong enough to present radical proportions to the client. In this case, this is a very small house, okay? This is a very small house in a very big plot, okay? It's a plot of 6,000 square meters in the middle of the forest, in a very beautiful countryside place and so on. But for norms reasons, for urban normative reasons, the house can only have 150 square meters. That I think that here in French is the limit between to have an architect and to don't have an architect. Is something like that? Okay, here there's an architect. But it was like this small, okay, 150 square meters. The problem with that dimension was that in the middle of such a big, beautiful landscape place, we felt that we don't have any tool to come in dialogue with the place, to perform with the place, to have a relation, to interact with the landscape. So we decided to have at least one large dimension, one really large dimension, a dimension that really led us to produce some relationship with the forest and the landscape. So we decided to develop that 3 wide meters house. Okay, so we just placed this dimension and we multiply this for almost 30 meters, more or less, 32 meters. And we place the same furniture, the same activities, the same uses, all this dimension large, okay? It's 320. 320 is the minimum dimension for a hospital bedroom, is the minimum dimension for a hotel bedroom, okay? It's the 2 meters of the bed and the wheelchair movement. So thanks to this radical proportion, we were able then to transform the geometry into this shape that produced this outside seating, okay, that face south, and that produced this small oasis in the middle of the forest, okay? So, and again, and thanks again to this, yeah, there's a you know that Spanish architect De La Sota. De La Sota, you know De La Sota? Well, De La Sota has a beautiful sentence that he always said that architects, we have to give to the clients liebre por gato. In the war, after the war in Spain, was very typical in the restaurants that you ask for rabbit, okay, but they give you cat, okay, you know, because it looks a little bit the difference. They were so poor. And the sentence of De La Sota was that we, the architects, we have to give the clients the opposite. For the price of a cat, we have to give them something really good to eat, okay? So when we are doing this, the strategies looks very simple in terms of geometry, but we try to give us 2, 3, 4 better results that not just the pure idea of the geometry performance. So thanks to this geometry strategy, the privacy into the house, you achieve the privacy because in one side is the bedroom, in the other side is the seating, and the other side is the kitchen with the dining. So there's no inside walls because privacy is achieved just because of the geometry of the U-shape. Then some extra schemes shows up, and schemes and schemes. After the schemes, we began, yeah, well, again, it's a vertical space, but then we check with a lot, because this is something that we cannot lie ourselves. I mean, and I think that is, again, a good building to do us a short reflection about that. This is a very ideological building. This is clearly a political position building. And this ideological approach is so strong that they are able to assume that there's no construction detail, okay? That there's no visual result to be discussed, okay? So this is why I admire a lot of this building. But we are not able, okay? We at the office, we are not like that. I mean, we know for sure that after a good strategy, there's 1,000 of different options, of different decisions, of proportions. And we also, after this schemes phase, we take a lot of time to check hundreds of different options in terms of pure. It's through the visuals because we use models and we use images, but it's because also we understand that behind this image and behind this scheme, there's an experience that because our previous experience, we are able more or less to imagine. So we do a lot of images, we do hundreds of images to check proportions, to check materials. Well, the house is finished. We haven't done good pictures, but okay, it's colonized again. It's funny people that they are really good in colonization. They are really messy. Okay. And this is we at the office visiting them and having a meal there. This is also another radical scheme. This is a public housing dwelling in Barcelona again. Well, we work basically close to Barcelona. Okay, one of the good things of the office is not the money, but is that we were really close to the office, so we are able to do a lot of visits to the site. Okay, so we really managed to be really involved in the construction process. This is a competition for this public building, for this public housing. When we decide what kind of competitions we want to do, one of the things that we always check is to see the difference, and this in housing in Spain always happen. I don't know in French, but in Spain, the maximum constructed surface is never the same than the surface result of the multiplication of the footprint with the number of plants. Okay? It's not the same. If you do the multiplication of the footprint of the plan with the number of plants, the surface is not the same that the maximum surface that the norms led you to build. Okay? Because they are imagining that you're gonna do courtyards for ventilation or whatever. The more is the difference, the more is the chance, the opportunity for architecture to take decisions. No? If you can build 13,000, but the footprint multiplied for the numbers of plants is 20,000, you have 4,000 square meters to manage, to decide where is the gap, to decide where is the empty space. Okay? So the more is the difference, the more options we have to decide things, to design, and so on. In this case, it was a good competition because it was this gap of 4,000 square meters between the two dimensions. But you see that the geometry on the top of the slide is really ugly. It's quite terrible in terms of urban design. This sharp corner, the L shape, and so on. This is a open block typology of urban design and so on. But we decided, instead of review this urban proposal, the rest of the teams decided to make a little bit more elegant the geometry of the urban block. And they decided to cut the sharp corner or to divide the L-shaped building and so on. We decided that it was not interesting. We assumed the geometry that the council proposed, and we placed this gap, this empty space, in the middle. We didn't know the solution, but at the very first moment of the design process, we knew that we need to produce cross-ventilation. Because it's always about the same. It's always about the experience. It's always about the natural comfort. It's always about that. So we decided, instead of change the shape, we decided to put the gap in the middle of these blocks. It was not simple because the block is just 14 meters. Right? It's very narrow. So to introduce a continuous courtyard, it didn't seem easy, but we decided that. And then we developed this typology, which is a continuous ring of identical rooms. All the rooms are 12 square meters, more or less. Okay, 12 square meters is enough for a dining, is enough for a bedroom, is enough for a sitting, is enough for a studio. So the typology is based in that idea of a continuous ring of always the same repetitive cells surrounding this courtyard, and again to surround this ring of cells in one side with a continuous terrace, in the other side with a continuous gallery. Okay, so then the radical, is a very repetitive building, of course, but the radical is in the section, because at the end you have a house in the fourth plan, because you arrive always from an outside staircase, you arrive through a gallery and so on. And the real indoor space, the so the comfortable, traditional comfort space, is just these 330 meters, because you have terrace and gallery in one side and one side. But you are living always with this opportunity, with this option of a very clear and natural cross-ventilation. Okay, so you come into the gallery and then and you open to the terrace. As I've told before, not at the very beginning of the office, of course, but after some competitions, some buildings, some houses, we were more or less positioned in Barcelona, in our surrounding, as an office concerned about sustainability, natural behavior, and all that. Okay, and we have changed our interest. We haven't changed our radicality in order to be concerned and compromised with these sustainable standards. Okay, But at the beginning, we were so ambitious. Okay, we were absolutely concerned about footprint, ecological footprint, low embodied energy materials, passive strategies. When you need the active systems, place the active systems in the surfaces, not in the air, and so on and so on. Domotic, very sophisticated domotic systems to control all the performance of the house or of the building or whatever. But we have changed that into something more simple, more tough, more resistant, less able to get broken, which is basically inertia and natural ventilation, mass and natural ventilation. This is something that works quite well in our climate context. It's not something that you can extrapolate or translate in other climate conditions. But in our case, every project we do is more and more clear that this is the good strategy in order to get this natural comfort. So the more is the inertia, the more is the mass, the better performs the building. So we have done a lot of research in massive systems, okay? In massive systems. We are 4 partners, okay? So I know that you know how difficult it is to work as a team in the studio when you are pairs. So imagine to be 4 as partners. It's quite messy. In our case, the way that from the very beginning of the office we've been able to come into an agreement was because we never put over the table personal desires. We never put over the table, I want something, I have a desire. We try always to discuss very objective, simple things, simple strategies. And also we have some common places, common backgrounds that we share, like the vernacular, the popular construction. This is something that when you are 4, we are H architects, because the H is because it's a non-sound letter in Catalan, okay? The H in Catalan doesn't sound. We write it, but it has no sound. And this is because we love that idea of the vernacular and the popular construction that, like Rudowski, no? Architecture without architects, and non-representative architecture, and we've been always in love with that kind of popular vernacular construction. In this kind of construction, it was the origin of all these strategies, because it's construction based in bearing walls, no? Massive construction, where the climate is basically managed by the geometry of the space, the cross ventilation, and so on. So we've been, from the very beginning of the office, researching, developing systems of bearing walls, okay? And now, but also with the challenge that every project tried to find out something new, okay? And in the last projects, we've been working with that kind of lime mortar concretes, okay? No cement concretes, lime mortar concretes with low embodied energy because it's lime, with very few part of cement if it's possible, with no steel bars inside, so it's not reinforced concrete, it's basically massive concrete, okay? So, and we've been working a lot with the aggregates, okay, with the aggregates, to conglomerates, to mix lime mortars with arids, with rocks, with stones, with different kind of arids and so on, okay? Because, because it's the fantastic excuse to present to the clients incredible wide walls, because it's not reinforced, so you need to have a very wide wall to assume the bearing performance. And this is 2 examples of that research. This is a house in a beautiful place in Catalonia called Ullastret. This is a small, beautiful village in L'Empordà, which is a nice landscape in Girona area. You can see the shape of the old castle, very small, beautiful town. And this town is very defined because they have this very strong, tall stones wall. It's full of a stones wall. Okay, all the plots, all the facades, even the orchards, even the place, the agricultural plots. Okay, are defined by huge stone walls. So we got that commission to make a weekend house in this orchard here. I think it's this one. Yeah. You see the mouse? Yeah. Okay, so this orchard, it was a commission to do a weekend house here, and the orchard was defined by, again, an amazing, huge stones wall. And in this area in Catalonia, we have this terrible just visual normative for tourists that all the facades has to look like it's been built with a stone. Okay? It doesn't matter if it's just a cladding, if it's just something glue over, but you have to look like very old. You have to look like very stone. Okay? It's just a visual approach. But it's part of the norms. But as the stone wall was already there, we decided a very, very simple strategy that was to attach the house to the previous stone wall. Okay? So the facade was so simple because it was just to open some small windows in the previous stone wall. Okay? But when we went to the council to ask for permission, suddenly they told us that the stone wall has to be demolished because the vans, the cars, the trucks were not able to do the movement in the corner. Okay, the street was so narrow that for the cars was difficult to do the movement. So it was supposed that the street has to become a little bit more wider and comfortable. So it was terrible because the strategy was so clear, the facade was already there, but the wall has to be demolished. So a little bit like in front of the heritage, this is the demolition of the stone wall, okay? And we ask the heritage, or we asked the pre-existence if was still able to perform in order to help to the house to perform in terms of structure, to perform in terms of behavior, of natural comfort, and so on. And the wall was not already there, but the stone was there. And the stone was still able to work in compressive way, to give inertia, a lot of inertia to the walls, and so on. So we developed this kind of aggregates combination, and we did that with the challenge, with the objective to do a just one wall house. So this house is just one layer wall. There's no insulation layer, there's no facade layer, there's no rainproof layer. It's just a white stone wall. It's a cyclopic concrete, okay, made with these former stones, mixed with lime mortar, mixed with the soil, with the sand of the soil of the land, of the plot, and also placing inside something that synchronizes. The context is not only the climate, is not only the physics. Context is also traditions. Context is also social resources. Context is also constructive traditions. So here in this place is quite traditional, also the rammed earth construction. Okay. So we try to do this kind of contemporary rammed earth construction, okay, with the technique of the rammed earth, but developing this new kind of cyclopic concrete able to perform not only in terms of structure, but also in terms of comfort. But the comfort was not only the inertia, the comfort is also the insulation, okay? So we have introduced in this concrete like this kind of small balls of glass that have air inside, okay? So are a ball of glass with air inside that by introducing this material, this product into the concrete, you reduce the density enough that with a 60 centimeters wide wall is enough for the insulation. Okay. Is enough for the insulation, again, in the Mediterranean, close to Barcelona, and so on. Don't try to do that in Nantes, it won't work, okay? And don't try to do that in more than one floor. Okay, it's just a ground floor house, so this is the process, the demolition, and to do this Rameter technique, but by doing this new kind of cyclopic concrete. And we place the stones in different positions depending on the structural performance or the future facade performance and so on. The typology is interesting, but it's not. I mean, the typology is basically the blind wall facing the street and a pure porch facing the plot, because it's a south orientation. It's also the beautiful view of the place, and is a very good orientation to get sun gains in summer and in winter, working as a greenhouse in winter and just a pure porch in summer. But the interesting was in the, that's the section, okay? Basically it's a porch. This is the construction process, placing the stones, okay? And then when we finished, we just dig a little bit the facade, just the facade, in order to recover the former stones, because the council norms asked for that kind of visual idea of the stones houses. Okay, the inside is different, is not showing the stones. Okay, and this is the south facade, completely open in summer. This is a non-heating system house. This is a weekend house. It's not a cheap house, but it's not expensive. You see that the materials, the products are really basic, are really rough. But it's cool because in winter, they love the house a lot, the owners, and they also want to go to the house in winter weekends. The beautiful is that during the week, as the house is closed, in winter, the greenhouse effect produces that the house is warm. It's 18, 19, 20 degrees, okay? They arrive on Friday, and the house is perfect. The fun is that in Sunday, they have to move, because after 2 days of open doors, closing doors, the temperature goes down, okay? And in summer, they have a little bit of heat, but nothing that cannot be solved with natural cross ventilation at night. This is another example of that kind of research, but it's a different product. This is a school in Mallorca. Well, it's not a school, it's an elderly people housing. It's a apartments for old people. And it has to be placed in a plot where used to be a school. Okay. Mallorca Island has this beautiful specificity that is an island, so the resources of an island are completely specific. In this island, they don't have clay to produce, they hardly have clay to produce bricks, but they have a stone. They have limestone. They call this stone mares. It's a beautiful, it's a typical Mediterranean stone that you can find out in Matera, in Italy, in Sicily, in Greece, La Provence. It's that kind of limestone, beautiful color, and so on. And it was so available resource that till the 80s, till the last 80s in Mallorca, all the construction was done with this kind of stone. Okay? Also the thin walls, also the division walls were made in stone, which is amazing. Okay? So we were lucky because this school, which is a building from the 70s or something like that, that has been closed for 10 or 15 years, was made, it's this ugly, but was made in stone. Okay? So in this case, we took advantage of this urban resource, which was the stones, the limestones of the walls, and we developed a different kind of technique with a similar kind of concrete. Okay? We won this competition with this scheme. It was a quite strange competition. You just have to present some schemes and strategies. And we present this drawing, which was basically this idea to transform the former stones of the school into blocks. And then with the blocks, do this kind of construction. okay? A pure bearing wall system. But pure means pure, that the slabs are supported by the wall by geometry. So the blocks in the ground floor is 1 meter, 90 centimeters, 80 centimeters, 70 centimeters, and in this distance, in this gap, in this difference of the section, is where the wood, the timber CLT panel is supported, okay? And is stable just because it's so huge, is because it's so wide, okay? So in this case, the technique is the old traditional technique of construction with the stones, okay? So the block work as a stone, as a traditional stone, and is this kind of traditional construction that in Mallorca is still able to find out people who is able to build that way, okay? So this is the plan from a drone, okay? Then, when we won the competition, well, the funny thing is that the administration, the public administration in Mallorca, they thought that they were so generous that because they were not asking to exhaust all the plot. They were not asking us to, it was not necessary. They were not asking for all the apartments possible, for all the surfaces possible. And they were thinking that thanks to that, maybe bigger courtyards will happen or make a little bit more of terraces or gardens and so on. We didn't did that. We did the opposite. Instead of do more garden, maybe someone will not agree with this strategy, it's possible, because we decided instead of have more garden, we decided to have more walls, okay? But because this obsession for the natural comfort that we have, for us is absolutely clear that it's better to live in a place with the wider walls possible. So we proposed this, which was to exhaust the geometry of the plot, but because the walls are so wide, okay? But the blocks were not possible. But the problem with this drawing of the competition was that at the end, you were doing these blocks by casting the concrete, okay? So you're giving shape, you're doing a casting system, you pour the concrete inside, so when you take off the cast, you just saw concrete, okay? The lime mortar concrete, beautiful concrete, whatever, low CO2 concrete, but the stone was not there. So then was when we decided a new kind of process, a different process, which was to produce huge blocks, gigantic blocks. So we did that kind of huge blocks, and then using that kind of quarry tool, whatever, cutting tool, just by cutting the big piece, then at the cut, the stone shows up. So here is pouring the stones. And then it's in the cut that you finally, and with a cheaper process, this is far cheaper than do block by block. So thanks to the cut, you recovered the beautiful. So we're always in this movement from the logical, from the very objective, from sustainability, to the experience, to the color, to the material, to the touching, to the sensitive. The blocks are like that. And this is very common also in the quarries in Mallorca that are very beautiful, that you see not only the stone, but also the footprint of the tool, of the cut. And the construction is like the pyramids. No? It's a little bit, it's really... But it's quite simple. You need a crane, obviously, and then just the timber slabs just support by geometry. They are just over. Okay. Yeah, the building has been finished. Now people is living inside. Okay, yeah. So let me just finish with this image. It's the only reference, I think. Well, in fact, one of the images that you've seen, a black and white one, it was a quarry of Mallorca. It was one of these Marès limestone. I've shown in a moment a black and white picture, a photograph of a Mallorca quarry, which are amazing places to go. Yeah, I show you this painting to come to an end, which is from a Catalan painter. I love to explain that kind of stuff, to see that in Catalonia we have also good painters. And this is a very skilled guy, Ramon Casas, very lazy too because he was rich. He didn't paint too much, but he was so skilled. But I show you this painting not because of the skill of the painter, but because of the title of the painting. This painting the title is a pure manifesto. Okay, the title, and I used to use this picture in my lectures, but I discovered the title later, and it was like I was like in shock because the title of this painting is An Indoor Outdoor, un interior al aire lliure, an inside space in an open space. That's the title of the painting, and for me it's a manifesto. For me it's the final and most clear concept that we have at the office. And we call to that reciprocal architecture. What means for us reciprocal architecture? It's obvious that we need to recover this sense of interdependency with nature. We have to be over this misunderstanding that the energy is infinite, that we can live in the artificial. Not because it's bad for the earth, because it's bad as experience, because it's a worse experience to live in the artificial. We have to recover that sense that we need to live in nature, to be in interdependence, to be in relation with nature. So we believe, and that's what we call reciprocal architecture, that the experience which is a result of the collaboration between design decisions and nature attributes is a better experience. And for me, this painting explains that. Is the comfort of these two couple. He's the brother-in-law and she's the sister of Ramon, okay, having this beautiful nap. But it's not only because of the vegetation, it's because of the geometry of the walls, it's because of the sense of heavy of the construction, it's because of the shade, it's because of a lot of things in collaboration with nature, with ventilation, with everything. So this is what we are trying to do at the office as a final resume, which is to achieve that kind of comfort thanks to our design, but of course in collaboration with the context. Thank you very much.
S'il y a des questions, il y a un micro que je peux faire passer.
It's been too large, but a question is welcome. Just one. You can ask in French, and Gustavo will translate me, so don't feel ashamed for the English. No questions? Ah, there's an arm there.
Hi, thanks for being here and thanks for your presentation tonight. It's wonderful. I'm in Bachelor 2 and I read a lot of references about your project. And I just have a question about the way that you, you talk a lot about your approaches to the intimacy and the sociality in your projects, like the intimacy of the house in the quartier, in the land.
What do you mean, that it doesn't look too much about intimacy?
Yeah, like you talk about the relationship between the house and the quartier
And
and the neighborhood, but in the neighborhood.
okay, yeah.
And then I wonder how you treat the intimacy inside of the house, because I read your references about the project 2104 or maybe in some of your social housing projects too.
I don't know. I think that you are quite true if your intuition is that we don't take much care about intimacy. What I mean is that we really believe that in any project, doesn't matter if it's a public building or a private housing, it has to be a gradient from the very public to the very intimate, okay? And the very public doesn't begin in the door's hall. It begins in the public space, in the square, whatever. I know more or less where began the public. In every project, the most intimate part is really different, okay? But it's true that as in the public buildings, what really concerns more the way that we project is not what in general people understand as the more intimate space, or in different way to explain. And I don't know if you're talking about that, maybe. The most intimate space for us, it doesn't have to be small. I mean, it's a gradation of intimacy, but it's not a gradation of dimension. So for me, this kind of a little bit strange or too radical section sitting could be very intimate, could be the very private, intimate space, because it's about your personal experience in that space. So, but it's true that we have a limited energy as designers. So at the end, after this very primordial, essential, basic space where the experience is more strong, the rest of a space, some of them are a little bit secondary in our strategies. Okay? In fact, I don't know if you know that text from Jackson Delat. It's a short text he did in the 80s as l'Épinac Blé group into une architecture d'aujourd'hui. I read this text like 20 years ago, and it was like, and he talked about that idea of very special spaces, but he also talks that it has to be some secondary spaces that are for some very specific functions. So there's some conventional intimate spaces that maybe in our strategies become secondary spaces, and maybe we don't take much care. I don't know if I answer very well the question.
Yeah, so for example, in the house, the most intimate space is the bedroom, for example.
Yes.
Yeah, we all agree. And so in your project, for example, in the casa, in the house that it's built like a fence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Throughout the house, there's not the like.
No, and in fact, 1 week ago, I was visiting this house with possible clients, American clients, okay? People from the States, from Chicago, that they want to do a house very close. And they become horrified. They become like, we don't want that. We love your architecture, but we don't want that. Because what is this crazy idea that to arrive to my bedroom, I have to cross my kid's bedroom? Yeah. It's like, for them, but they come from Chicago. It's very cold, Chicago. They were not able to imagine that it's possible to arrive to their own bedroom crossing the garden, which is fantastic, or crossing just the porch. I mean, it's a problem of intimacy, but just in very, very specific moments, the 5 days that rains in Catalonia. So again, don't try to translate some strategies, okay? It's very up to the client, it's very up to the... But it's true that in that sense, we were not taking much care about the intimacy of the bedroom, because not only because of the circulation, that you cross the bedrooms to arrive one bedroom after the other, but because of the section, because the bedroom is completely, the window is completely open to the garden. Yeah. So, but what we did in that section is to combine that section and that crossing with that idea of chapel. Not the bedroom, but the bed is like a chapel carved into the wall. Okay, so your head is really away of the corridor. But it's true that it's not, for example, in that case, for those people from Chicago, was the opposite of what means intimacy. But again, it's a convention. It's a pure convention. We will do a home for them. It won't be the same. But we will ask these people to be over different kind of conventions. Okay? But we have to be always fighting, I think, I mean, it's my opinion, but I think that as architects, more or less, we agree about that. That we have to, if we want to live better, we have to live different. Maybe the intimacy concept has to be reviewed if we want to live better.
Thanks for your response.
Hello. You're talking a lot about how you reuse the existing, transforming walls into bricks. Do you also think about how, in the future, next architects in many, many years will be able to reuse your buildings?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that that's what I was trying to explain about this transhistorical concept. I mean, okay, it's necessary, it's an ecological strategy that if we build something, it has to last as maximum as possible. But we are full surrounded of examples of buildings that what fails is not the construction, is the typology. No? Because suddenly, if you change the use, if a public building becomes something different, the building in terms of construction is there, but the typology doesn't assume new uses and become fail. And when I was talking about the transhistorical concept, maybe it has looked a little bit like a poetic image, but the last thing to make that this building can be used in different uses is that on the last idea to make typologies where the spaces are not defined by the use, by the function, but defined by the attributes. And with geometrical attributes, comfort attributes always good, but geometrical attributes able to assume different kind of programs. So that's the way that we can imagine, and of course that we imagine that our buildings, it's going to be used in the future for different things, because that kind of dwelling for old people with these walls, I think that will be there for 200, 300 years for sure. So the use will change. So maybe I'm wrong, but I hope that this kind of structures, this kind of typology defined by geometries, generous, but not clearly defined for just one use, will be able to survive in future with different uses. I hope, but let's see.
Thanks for the lecture. My question's more about, you talked a lot about verticality in your projects and thinking about vertical spaces and kind of prioritizing them because it reintroduces, I mean, like kind of more of a natural climate that again, like has the stratification of different temperatures and the hot air rises to the top. But on the other side, I also see this kind of issue perhaps with clients where it can create quite large and overwhelming or slightly claustrophobic spaces. Like I think partly about I'm thinking mainly about like some of the residential projects you showed, with they're very, very tall and quite narrow row houses. And how do you, what are some strategies for convincing clients that yes, you need such a tall space, even though it might cost a lot more and you can't actually inhabit the space? I think it's really interesting.
Well, we are very convincing. We are very convincing. But look, as everything, I don't try to look. I don't try to be an example of nothing. Okay, so not all the clients can assume that. Not all the clients have the same kind of convention, or maybe everybody have conventions. Also, we have conventions. I have conventions, and I'm not trying to look like someone absolutely open mind and free mind and so on. But what we can be so convincing, because I'm 51, so I'm able to explain, and I'm good on that, to transmit my previous experience. The other thing is that, and this is something that I don't advise you if you want to open your own agency and so on. But from the very beginning of the office, we haven't assumed all the commissions and all the clients that has come to the office. Not for nothing, but for example, a classical convention. I want to park my car into my new house. We don't assume that. Why not? Because that kind of classical attached houses of the Catalonia popular neighborhoods, they just have two floors, two facades to relate with the context, to relate with climate. Are you going to assume that you will lose 25% of this interchange surface to park your car into your house? Well, I will not do that project. It doesn't mean that your convention is proper and is accurate. So we will not mix together. What I mean is that in one side, not all the clients and commissions, we are able to assume that. On the other side, we have experience enough to try to transmit the powerful of this experience, and something that is far more important. People basically don't understand the EDRIC drawings. Okay, so they have to be absolutely confident on you. A client who is not confident on you, at the end will be a problem. And I don't want to look too much snob or too much exigent with clients. But, I mean, it's part of the game. I mean, if you want to be radical, or you convince them, or you just change your client. In fact, I think it was Cedric Price that once has a commission or a possible commission at the office of a pair, of a couple. And Price loved to talk about a lot, and to talk a lot of hours with the people to understand the behavior and so on. And after 2 hours of talking, he told them, you don't need a house, you have to divorce. So not all the clients fits the architect, and this is not bad. But believe me, I mean, I know that the previous experience that you have got in a vertical space, it's something that doesn't look too much domestic, like a church, a cathedral, a quarry, a cliff, but are spaces that really impress you in terms of experience, okay? But what here I'm trying to explain, and let me put you in another way, in just pure terms of resources and economy, because people can be convinced if you take off 1 0 of the equation, no? The vertical, and it's in the history of construction. I mean, the more vertical is the geometry of the roof, the more ecological is the solution for the roof. The vertical roofs can be done with wood tiles, with straw, no? It's in the history of architecture. The more horizontal is the roof, the more artificial the more technical is the rainproof system, the more expensive too. Okay? So vertical is also about if you achieve a natural comfort as close as possible to a pure passive behavior, that means also an economical argument. Okay, so, but basically it's about confidence. Basically it's about confidence. Well, okay. But I think it's enough, isn't it? Ah, no. Yeah, sorry.
Merci pour votre conférence. Je vais parler en français parce que j'ai envie de vous entendre parler espagnol. J'aimerais savoir comment, sur vos coupes, dans pas mal de vos projets, vous présentez, vous indiquez des températures. Et j'aimerais savoir comment vous avez tout un travail sur la ventilation naturelle. Est-ce que vous le faites en interne, dans votre studio? Est-ce que vous travaillez avec des partenaires, des bureaux d'études? Et ces températures qui sont si précises, est-ce que vous les vérifiez? Est-ce que vous... Voilà, est-ce que vous pouvez m'en dire un petit peu plus?
Ah, sí, vale, las secciones termodinámicas. Okay. Yeah, that's en español. ¿Qué entendéis todos el español? Soy mucho mejor actor en español. Mira, en Barcelona no pasó algo. A ver, nosotros somos de una escuela, mira, Gustavo también, somos de una escuela que no es la escuela de Barcelona de Diagonal. Es una escuela que en los 80 decidieron hacer para la gente que éramos de pueblo, en el otro lado de las colinas de Barcelona, ¿no? Pues, o a los expulsados de Barcelona, ¿no? Y es una escuela pequeña. Una de las ventajas de la escuela pequeña es que pasan más cosas inesperadas. Una de las cosas inesperadas que pasó en la escuela del Vallès fue un personaje que es Albert Cuchí, que es un profesor de construcción. Es un profesor de tecnología muy interesante y tal, que empezó a introducir conceptos de sostenibilidad operativa. O sea, yo creo que hay una cosa fundamental en arquitectura. Cuando digo que tenemos que recuperar, o sea, esto que he estado explicando, que es hablar de confort, no hablamos nunca en el despacho porque es una cosa que asumen los ingenieros, ¿no? Es parte de la consultoría del ingeniero, ¿no? Y es una cosa porque como además el aire es una cosa que no se ve, pues lo resuelve una máquina que no se ve y la ponemos en un sitio que no la vea nadie, porque es aire, es algo que no se ve. Y en cambio, cuando tú consigues hacer evidente, cuando consigues hacer visible lo invisible, que es el aire, la gravedad, la estratificación, la convección, que es invisible, o la gestión del sonido, de repente estás alimentando, llenando de atributos la experiencia. Por lo tanto, la experiencia es mejor. Y hablando de esto, no solo es que es más bello, es que es más sostenible, es que nos interesa como arquitectos. Nos interesa como arquitectos recuperar la responsabilidad sobre el diseño del confort. Estas cosas las hablaba Cuchí porque te hablaba de sostenibilidad desde estrategias arquitectónicas. Geometría y materia. Uno de los secuaces o resultados de este personaje Cuchí fue que apareció una oficina de arquitectos que hacían consultoría medioambiental, que se llama Societat Orgànica. Son unos tíos de mi edad, pero son alumnos de Cuchí y montaron una oficina que se llama Sociedad Orgánica. Todo lo que veáis de Barcelona o de Mallorca que os interesa ha pasado por Societat Orgànica. Y nosotros fuimos sus primeros clientes. El edificio del ICTA, el Research Center, fue uno de los primeros que hicieron con nosotros. ¿Vale? Entonces, son unos tipos que te hablan básicamente de termodinámica. O sea, aquí estamos frente a dos grandes crisis, la crisis ecológica y la crisis social, ¿no? Justicia social y crisis ecológica. Yo digo que como ciudadanos podemos hacer muchísimas cosas, pero como arquitectos, frente a la crisis ecológica, termodinámica. Frente a la justicia social, tipologías. faltan arquitectos desarrollando nuevas tipologías. La tipología es nuestra herramienta disciplinar para proponer nuevas formas de vivir, ¿no? La tipología es política. Perdón, me estoy perdiendo. Pero Societat Orgànica eran unos arquitectos que te hablaban de termodinámica. No te hablaban de electricidad, no te hablaban de máquinas, te hablaban de cosas que tú como arquitecto podías diseñar, ¿vale? Entonces, ¿qué pasa? Que llevamos 20 años con estos tíos. Entonces, ahora ya, para hacer una casa, ya me lo hago yo, más o menos. Además, casi siempre sus simulaciones son más pesimistas que la realidad. Por tanto, para una casa, ya me lo hago, ya te lo digo yo. Ahora, para los equipamientos, sí que hacemos simulaciones. Hacemos simulaciones termodinámicas, hacemos simulaciones también de CFD. O sea, el problema hace 20 años es que la simulación de CFD, de fluidos, de aire, era muy dificultosa. Y ahí sí que íbamos un poco así. Pero ahora ya, entonces, ya te digo, trabajamos con este tipo de personajes. Cada vez los necesitamos menos, pero son ellos. Son unos tíos además muy interesantes. No sé si se ha entendido, pero dígalo sí.
Est-ce que vous avez tous compris ou... Non.
Mentirosos.
Let's go. Non, mais en fait, il fait la différence entre les ingénieurs qui sont capables de calculer des choses à travers des simulations où il parlait de l'air, par exemple, des choses qu'on ne voit pas, comment traiter l'air, sont des machines qu'on va cacher quelque part et que nous, on n'est pas capable de calculer et qu'à l'école d'architecture où il a étudié, il y avait un professeur, qui est Albert Cucci, qui a développé tout ce travail qui a été très important et qu'aujourd'hui, tous les architectes catalans travaillent avec ce système, qui était de travailler tout ce qui était le côté climatique à partir des solutions architecturales et n'est pas technologique. Et donc, Albert Cucci a été le précurseur de tout ça à l'école del Vallès, et il y a quelques architectes élèves de Cucci, comme nous, qui ont créé une boîte qui s'appelle Societat Orgànica, que c'est une boîte qui pourrait rassembler ici choses comme Franck Boutet, par exemple, quelque chose comme ça, mais qui sont que des archis et qui travaillent surtout la thermodynamique à partir des conceptions architecturales. Et donc, ce qui permet, ça fait 20 ans qu'ils travaillent, et ils ont appris à toute une génération d'architectes catalans à travailler le climat et toutes les solutions à travers l'architecture et la conception architecturale. Et donc, effectivement, ce qu'il dit, c'est que quand il fait une maison individuelle, l'expérience qu'ils ont, toute cette génération d'architectes, elle est tellement importante qu'ils n'ont pas besoin de faire appel à eux, qu'ils savent déjà les calculer. Et même quand c'est des bâtiments, des équipements, il dit qu'il fait appel. Je connais beaucoup d'archis qui ne font même pas appel parce que déjà sont tellement rodés qu'ils savent dire quelle température on va avoir à chaque endroit. Et c'est une façon de travailler qui est très différente par rapport à la France et qui est super intéressante en Catalogne et de laquelle, ici, je pense qu'on a énormément de choses à apprendre.
Merci. Okay, I'm really tired, so thank you very much.